I will just, if you permit me, just a 30-second soundbite. I think Ben Havanek, our horticulturalist, is over there in the corner.
Good.
Judy worked here for years, and Judy did a fabulous job. I think Ben brings a very different approach and a different set of eyes, which is equally fabulous, but in a different kind of fabulous way. I think Ben is propose a lot of things that make that operation more efficient. So I'm honestly not terribly concerned about the impacts this would have on our summer operations, particularly given that you've reduced the amount of bid district planters by a quarter.
Given that, I moved to reduce summer help from 12 to 8 positions and reflecting the budget 0 instead of 13,000.
Second. Just a second, okay. Any further discussion? If not, let's all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And thank you in advance.
Yeah, thanks for making us more efficient.
All right. Reduced fuel due to less summer help. Seems like an easy one.
I moved to reduce fuel due to less summer help from 1,500 to 0.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Say
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay. Eliminate winter snow patrol services. Now, this is again the people driving around seeing who has not shoveled.
Correct. On a designated route. So it's not block by block through the village. There have been routes that a previous village board approved for the program. It's currently, that contract was previously held by the Green Team. Just for full disclosure, they have verbally indicated to us that if they don't keep both the mowing contract and the streetscape contract, they're probably not interested in this contract. And based on the proposals that came back, they're not the low cost provider on both of those other contracts. So there is a likelihood that they may not be interested in providing this service going forward. We've had some preliminary conversations with other vendors, and I don't really have any confidence whatsoever that we will find someone else to do it for $1,800.
Is this just the driving around and noting where the snow needs to be, or is it also removing for people who haven't removed in 24 hours?
They do that also, but that is a separate cost. That cost is billed directly to the property owner. This is them doing a patrol and then tagging properties who haven't completed their snow removal.
So would we be absorbing that? So if we don't get another contract?
No, I think we would not do it.
We
don't have the staff to provide that service.
Clients did that.
Yeah, I did
They,
too.
no, they do not.
But they go around and look at who hasn't mowed their grass.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Right? It's the same thing in the summer,
Correct.
but whatever.
It's slow
Isn't that,
times.
isn't that part and parcel? I don't know.
That
Okay.
would be an operation. That's a separate.
I think we're a very walkable community, and snow removal we're a really unique community that keeps our sidewalks clean, and I would hate to regress from that. It's hard enough when people are running or doing other activities if there's snow and ice building up on the sidewalk, and this is a proactive way of monitoring that.
I agree. I mean, the problem.
Yeah, I agree,
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I'd like to keep this in the budget at 1,800, but it sounds like that might not be an option for us.
And is there another vendor that would do it, like,
Not that we've talked to.
even for that, even for twice that much? I'm just, I'm not saying that that's the right
Yeah,
thing.
I don't know. Unless we do a request for proposal, I can't answer that
But,
question.
a resident can call and say, this address is not done.
I don't want to rely on residents clearing the sidewalk or calling so that I or any of you or anyone in our village can walk safely down the sidewalk.
So I agree. I don't want to sound, I think that there's a lot of seniors that rely on the sidewalks being being done, but I don't wanna budget for something that we probably aren't going to spend, if we can't find a provider. And I also think that we can internally come up with an operations adjustment, maybe deduct a different service level somewhere. Like, I think this is an important service, but I also think that we are gonna be looking at organizational management, next, in 2019, and there's a lot of us in 1.5 square miles, so there's got to be a way. I mean, $1,800 is not a lot of hours, right? I mean, how many hours did that cover?
It's a, the contract is structured that they bill us based on their time, but the 18 is a guaranteed amount. So if there's 3 snowfalls and they don't spend $1,800, we pay them 18 anyway. Over 18, then it's a time and material.
And is most of the properties the route in the business district, or is it mostly in the residential district?
I believe the vast majority of it are routes to school,
Okay.
and then some other more highly traveled, highly visible areas.
So I'm just thinking, I just think that that's such a small amount of time that routes to school could be the crossing guard, like it could be our police officer. I mean, there's people out in 1.5 square miles that can absorb this. I think it's an important function, and I think that in the end, we may have to go to a different service if we can't, but I wouldn't put it in.
I would make a motion not to eliminate the winter snow patrol services at this time in the budget, and if we don't have a vendor, we'll have to deal with it then, but it was, at this point this evening, keep it in.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? I'm not gonna vote for the motion. I feel like there's other ways we can accomplish this. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-2.
Part of the problem was the wording of it.
I know.
You
I know.
nobody wants to eliminate the service, but we just don't wanna pay.
Exactly.
Yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
That's okay.
We're moving on.
Okay, the library's capital equipment request, and do we have a page for that?
Page 84.
Upgrading computers to Windows 10, replacing server, replace children's public computers and lounge chairs, children's area. Where are we? Can I just see where we are?
Well, without getting into any of these, keep in mind that this is staff
Yeah.
requested.
We're at 2.9%, okay. What do we have on?
Do you wanna come to this one?
Well, is this the last one?
What the bees and.
Yeah.
Fees and capital, so.
Big B's. I mean, there's big capital.
Yeah, why don't we
budgets.
consider it along with, the other capital? We do have one more, senior resource center, consider using fund balances again. There's no doubt, how much is all that one?
Well, page 88, last year we used 15,000 of fund balance as a budgetary action. Our recommendation was that we still need to preserve a certain amount of fund balances to cover cash flows for those activities until we get the grant reimbursements, which are typically about 9 months delayed.
Is this the 38,000 that we're talking about?
This is line 25, or line 25 on the sheet, page 88.
We had a beginning fund balance of 55,494.
Yep.
And we're using, although it was not in the budget, we're projecting to use almost 17,000 in fund balance, so that's gonna reduce. Why did we have to use fund balance? Are they over budget?
Well, the budget was 15,000. If you look at the very top of the sheet on page 87,
Oh, I see, surplus of 5.
which is basically the budgetary work for fund balance.
All right, so it was budgeted, I misspoke, okay.
So we've got a $20,000
Down to
increase.
38,529, so the question is, do we continue to reduce their fund balance?
what do you see as needing that fund balance? Oh, cause they don't get the grant money?
Well,
Do we,
the reimbursements from page 88 only come twice a year, and that's typically about 9 months after, like in September, and then maybe in March of the following year. So there's a lag. I would advocate the best practice would be to maintain sufficient fund balances in that fund to cover that. The other part of that is, you know, we're gonna be in the same position next year if we have a fund balance again. We're gonna have another situation where we're gap funding.
So it's kind of a cash flow thing, what you're saying, and they did increase the Benjamin Fund contribution.
well, the Benjamin Fund doesn't fund our stuff, so it's, right? I mean, they fund,
They fund page 88. We fund page 87.
right. So how do you make it a non-structural problem? Do we budget more in a certain line item? Cause I would like to do that. Meaning, I think that in order, you said if we're gonna be in the same, if we use surplus, we're gonna be in the same position next year. How do we, where do you put it so that we're not in the same position next year?
Well, anytime you draw on non-current revenues, which is fund balance, and you have to replace them at some point in time in the future with current revenue, because you're gonna run out of your money.
Right?
You're just gonna
So,
get into a pickle.
I mean, they do have, I mean, we're putting in 20,000 more in levy,
Right.
right? And, there's no surplus supply, so we made up for the surplus supply plus 5,000.
Plus
in
5,000. 5,000 is the year-to-year difference. 15,000 is the gap that we're trying to address now, because we used fund balance last year.
okay, so, and what was the increase for that came about last year, the 15,000?
It was just a budgetary matter.
Is it just like salary increases, what's causing the,
She
It
got
was-
another
it was-
half a
It's been a
position.
105 for,
It really was, my recollection was it was just a way to reduce tax of the Michigan Research Center.
but before that, if it's a structural problem, what caused?
She had another quarter-time position or something, her FTEs went up last year and the year before.
Well, in 2017, we funded 105,000 in property taxes. You can see that.
Right, so we just kept lowering it.
We decided instead of funding the property taxes last year, we were going
Right.
to take 15,000
Nothing
of
changed.
fund balance. So there's no inherent
Yeah.
difference between the expenditure levels, other than we chose as a budgetary measure last year to apply fund balance.
Right, so the motion I would like to make is to bring it back up and use property taxes to the level that we need. What exists
And
today?
that would.
Well, that's a current,
Okay.
that's the
Current
That's where it
status.
is now, so you're saying to not use fund balance, to make no change to the proposed budget, and
Use property taxes like we did before. It's $100,000 for an entire senior population, I can't even
well,
tell you.
did you make a motion?
What would the motion be? I would like to make a motion to
not consider
Not
using fund balance
consider using fund balance
in the senior resource center.
for the senior resource center operating budget. Okay, motion fails. Need a
Is there a second?
so what's the cash? You said,
I
so
think,
we're-
don't you have to either second it or let it fail before discussion, I'm sorry.
If there's not a second.
Okay, go ahead, if
you said the 38,000, so you're floating maybe half the Benjamin, the 87, or 40,000 you're floating?
Well, we're floating about 3/4 of the 55,817
Oh, okay, so
operationally.
you go,
But you're gonna run into this next year again, I mean,
right.
we've
Which I would
depleted our.
advocate that about 40,000 is the appropriate fund balance for this fund.
Which is where we're at then.
What do you say the appropriate, 40?
About 40,
So we're gonna-
35 to 40, I mean, we're in that zone.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that we could not adapt by some other metric, but it's a judgment call.
So I'm a little
Right.
confused as to what we-
I know I'm not gonna get reimbursed for the first 6 months of 19 for the Benjamin Fund until September
Right.
of
So if you look
19.
at the top line.
Plus I'm funding,
See this top line?
August and September as well. So it's about 3/4 of that 55,817 on page 88. So quick math, that's somewhere around 40 grand.
But I mean,
So you see how
right,
we
but then
reduced it
when
in
you get
2017?
paid
Yep.
from the Benjamin
Or
Fund, you back
18.
up to 40
No,
grand.
back up.
And
So that's
you don't need
not
to,
sustainable.
you don't
because
need to
the
make
operating
the-
expenses are
you know, you don't need to
she's not
use the
getting a
surplus,
raise,
or you
nobody's
could borrow
getting
from
more
the general
positions.
fund,
So
couldn't
we
you?
can use balance,
We
fund
could.
balance.
We could.
Okay.
But then it,
Maybe
once I get
next year
paid,
we'll be
now
in the
I'm
same
funding
situation.
July
The
through
operating budget is
December,
this much.
that I won't get paid until March of the following year. So there's always a,
It's a
a
position
lag.
and a half difference.
Why don't we start doing it quarterly?
What?
Why don't we start doing it quarterly?
But I'm just saying, we have a position and a half here, which is so minuscule, they could use more, and unless we're gonna cut in the future years a half a position, you could, this is, the 105 is literally for those two positions. Everything else is paid in the Benjamin Fund. So you're either supporting of those positions, or you, in the end, we're not gonna have enough money next year to fund it through fund
Well,
balance.
but the fund balance, he's saying he's keeping his fund balance to float until the Benjamin Fund reimbursements come in.
But they don't need our
And-
salary.
And, right, but he is, that's what the
But we
float
still have to
is
pay for those expenses until we get reimbursed from them.
But you could
which is
borrow,
on a
but you
9-month
could
plan.
borrow from the general fund and pay the general fund back. I mean, I don't know that we need to keep the float in here.
But every year, I'm just saying, every year if it goes down by 15,000, the two salaries is this much, 105. So after next year, we're not gonna have enough even to utilize it anymore.
Well, nobody said 15,000. I mean, I would say maybe 10.
You know what I'm saying, though? That unless you cut a half a position or something here, everything else is funded by the Benjamin Fund. So all
The
expenses
funding
except
would
the two
stay the same.
positions.
No one's cutting anything. We're just saying instead of levy, use some, it doesn't have to be 15,000, but you could use some.
True.
And Mark's saying, well, we need it for a float. If you need it for a float, you can borrow from the general fund.
Until
Do we
next
need-
year.
Do we need to have a float? Right, then we have the same decision to make next year. I don't know. I mean, we have some big items coming in capital. Maybe this isn't one that's really worth fighting about, frankly. Okay, so you made a motion, correct?
But nobody seconded it.
Nobody seconded. I'll second the motion. I don't wanna argue about this one. Okay, any further discussion on this?
Can we go back and go through the motion one more time? Just so
The
we can
motion
be
is
clear?
to not make any change, so,
Not
so
using
we'll
fund
increase the
balance.
levy by, the levy will go up by 20,000, we're not, and we'll keep the fund balance where it is.
38?
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passes 6-1. Okay. Let's go down to B, capital. Okay, number 39, defer organizational analysis. Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're in favor of this, because we want to do this in-house?
Correct, and do it in a staged approach.
We're doing all the studies.
What?
We're doing all the studies.
Well, no, this would not be a comprehensive approach. This would focus primarily on, from listening from the discussions of
Mhm.
budget, it's
Mhm.
really clear that we need to start first with understanding what we have. It's a frequent comment from listening to people, whether it be new staff or trustees who have more recently come on board, or even trustees who have been here for a period of time. And so I think in order to really make good educated decisions on where we're going, we need to take an inventory of what we have and identify a roadmap for some of our next discussionary topics on it. The first two buildings that we'd like to start with, and I'm categorizing it by building because it's easier for purposes of this discussion, would be the Village Hall and the services provided from Village Hall, and then also looking at DPW, to kind of identify, go through an educational process with everybody, and then make some decisions of what that next step for a roadmap would be. It would be inclusive of taking a look at other municipalities, with like characteristics and benchmarking, so that we have some type of a comparison level based upon services that we also provide. So that becomes a key trick in there. And I think once we have that baseline, we can allow ourselves to have a better, more educated discussion on where we want to go next.
I would support that. I'd like to make a motion to defer the organizational analysis study, reducing the budget by $30,000 on this line item. And to support an in-house inventory, to which the village manager just described.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Deferred transportation and parking study, that would be a savings of $90,000.
I would make a motion to defer the transportation and parking study for a
Second.
savings of $90,000.
I mean, that was our number one priority for
Yeah.
our organization.
And transportation, we've been talking about, I mean, the amount of time our village spends in every department, based on the fact that we have not done the circulation study for the village, is enormous. I mean, according to the village manager as well. In addition, we have to prepare our comprehensive plan anyways, and this is one of the components that goes into that comp plan update. So rather than trying to tackle every single component of our comprehensive plan at one time, this is probably of the 5 different categories within a comp plan, this is one of the main, one of the ones that you really wanna pay attention to. And parking aside for a second, just the circulation, which is the bulk of this funding, I think it was 60 grand. We get requests, our police officers are doing, parking counts for people that want residential congested areas. We're getting requests, I get requests, I spend an enormous amount of time fielding questions from residents on stop signs, speed bumps, cul-de-sacs, bike lanes. It would be really helpful, in my opinion, for us to do something comprehensively at the village level, and this was where we'd start. In addition, parking, we've spent 3 years now talking about the same thing with no information, to act on. It doesn't mean it's gonna pass. It just means it's a change in the village's, population and their desires for service levels. And this would help to address that once, at least for the next 10 years.
So does anybody else have any comments?
I do. Originally, I was in support of this. This is before I realized it was a $95,000 price tag that went along with it. And it was when we were doing our prioritization, we didn't know how much things would cost. We didn't have the budget discussion. In fact, we decided we were gonna hold off on a lot of things until we had this comprehensive